Welcome to the Lead at the Top of Your Game podcast, where we equipped you to more effectively lead your seat at any employer, business, or industry in which you choose to play. Each week, we help you sharpen your leadership acumen by cracking open the playbooks of dynamic leaders who are doing big things in their professional endeavors. And now your host, leadership tactics and organizational development expert, Karen Farrell Rhodes.
Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the podcast. And thanks for joining another episode designed to help you better lead at the top of your game. Now, as you know, for season 3, each month we're featuring leaders who have fascinating roles in a particular profession or industry. And today's episode is part of our special series featuring leaders who focus on fostering inclusive workplaces. And now, enjoy the show.
Hello, my superstars, and welcome back to another episode of the Lead at the Top of Your Game podcast. We are so pleased to have on today's show, Ama. I'm going to say it slowly so I pronounce her name right. Ama Agyapong. You say it real quick so we have it.
Good. Agyapong. You were really
there
close.
We go. I tried to get it. Agyapong. I always just call her Ama, so I never do go to her last name, but she is fantastic, as you all will soon see. But Ama is the founder and CEO of Inclusion Enterprises, which is a training and development company with a particular expertise in DEIB. And for those who don't know, that's in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. Now, Ama is fondly known as that inclusion lady around the corporate scene. And she is a sought-after speaker who is really a force for change because she advocates for the accountability and awareness around the extremely dynamic topic of inclusion. So welcome to the podcast, Ama.
Thank you for having me.
We are just so honored to have you. I know, personally, the topic of inclusion has so many legs, arms, and perspectives. We could talk not for just 30 minutes, but for probably 30 days about it. But we're super thrilled to bring some of your insights to this show on, the importance of it and maybe some lessons for our listeners as well. But before we dive deep into our topic, we always love to hear a little bit about our guests. So for just as much as you feel comfortable, would you mind sharing us a sneak peek with about your life outside of work?
Oh my goodness, yes. So I am affectionately known as EJ's mom.
Love it.
So I'm originally a girl from Miami working really hard to create a life for my son that I didn't necessarily have. So I'm that mom. I call myself a geriatric millennial boy mom. So, and my mom is a baby boomer. My grandmother is a 91-year-old traditionalist. So talk about inclusion and diversity of thought and all of those things.
Yeah.
So typical day in the life is me working, and then, I'm doing all the things: soccer, swimming, wrestling. I mean, you want to do basketball? Let's do basketball. You want to I try to keep him in all of the events because he's an only child, to keep him around kids. But it is like a second job.
It is.
So aside from kid activities and being the newfound soccer mom, which is odd for me to say, I really do enjoy, dancing, meditating, getting massages, having me time, because I feel like that self-care is important as well.
Oh, absolutely. So I concur on both. Self-care time is a non-negotiable for me. So I always try to carve that out. And as you know, I'm recently an empty nester. So, but I have been there, done that. I was the biggest Uber mom and getting, our daughter involved in everything. So totally understand about that. And you're still smiling, so things must be going pretty good.
I am for right now, right?
For right now, yeah. As of today, right this second, today at this time. All right, Ms. Ama, thank you so much for sharing that. So let's get to our topic. People know in general the term, the term inclusion means overall. It's been heavily used in, corporate, in the media, in our lexicon, and the way we live and work. But from your perspective, what does inclusion in the workplace really mean in a practical sense?
Yeah. So I think at its basic level, it's just making sure people in your organization feel seen, feel heard, feel respected, feel included, feel valued. I think that's the very basic level. But I often say I help leaders manage the dynamics of difference, because once you really learn how to manage differences, whether it's racial differences, sexual orientation, thought differences, then you learn how to leverage that and celebrate it. So that's why I said that the basic is making people feel a certain way. But once you take it up another notch, you're really understanding and acknowledging what that difference is and finding a way to celebrate and incorporate it for the greater good. So that's my opinion of inclusion.
No, I love that. I absolutely love that. And on its surface, it sounds great. It sounds like it should be a kumbaya moment. But in your experience, because I know you do a lot of consulting and speaking on the topic, what have you found is some of the roadblocks to it actually being, I won't say embraced, because a lot of people do embrace it, but where it's not, I'll just say fully used or fully demonstrated in the workplace? What are some of those either triggers or roadblocks or blind spots or underlying reasons why people have sometimes have an issue with inclusion?
So I'm going to go personal and then I'll go organizational.
Great, yeah.
From like a personal perspective, I think people love to focus on the word inclusion because they don't want to deal with diversity. And diversity meaning they don't want to talk about race. They don't want to talk about gender. They don't want to talk about gender identity or sexual orientation. And so inclusion feels like the safe place. However, you can't have inclusion if you're not willing to acknowledge what the differences are that people are bringing to the table. And so it takes tough and difficult conversations that I think people struggle with. Additionally, so T.D. Jakes has this book called Disruptive Thinking, and he has this quote in there. He says, I can't get a GED without learning about you, but you can get a PhD without learning about me. And
Wow.
so think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That's
And
deep.
especially when we're talking about racial differences, which if you go to any organization and you look at the data, the intersectionality of race typically lowers the experience. And so what I'm thinking is people don't know how to navigate those cultural differences. And because of that, they shy away from it. They get nervous and wound up excluding people, even if it's unintentionally. And so I think it goes deeper than just bias, right? I think it goes into learning and understanding how to navigate cultural differences, cultural competence, having difficult conversations, making mistakes, and not trying to be perfect all the time. I think those things get in the way personally of truly including, evaluating someone's opinion, acknowledging their existence, and finding that their experience might be different than yours. So what are some changes we need to make so they can feel valued and included within the workplace? So I think that's the personal piece. It's just really understanding differences,
Yeah.
knowing how to manage that, knowing how to navigate it, and then being comfortable with being uncomfortable because you're going to make mistakes, right?
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
from a structural perspective, if you think about, a lot of these organizations were created with a one type of person in mind,
That's
right?
right. That's
Like
right.
especially the ones created in the 30s and the 20s, even earlier. I mean, they weren't thinking about women. They weren't thinking about any type of
And
difference.
technology to the where we've advanced to this day, it's a whole new world from what
It's
they
a
were trying to
whole
support.
new world from what
Yes.
it was originally created to be, even HR laws. So when we think about our structures within an organization, I think it's also where people get, where they, get in trouble sometimes is convenience. So it's easy to just keep doing things the way we've been doing it, not challenging the status quo, not thinking about who's being served by these policies and procedures and practices, who's not being served, and knowing that it's going to take a lot of work to change it because a lot of these policies and practices are baked into the DNA of the organization. And
Right.
so I think convenience is a bottleneck for a lot of companies because we're really talking about policies and systems and how do we recruit? How do we develop talent? How do we even market our information, right? Like, is everyone being represented? So, those are the two ways that I think personally and structurally that people sometimes struggle.
I agree totally with that. That's what I've seen over my career as well. And if I think about even the current times, so this is a little bit about me. So I'm a news nerd, and so I do listen to a lot of different types of news, but in particular, I love business news. Try to keep up with the trends and what's going on. And about 2 weeks ago, I can't remember which outlet it was on, but anywho, they were saying that even in this kind of politically charged environment, when they surveyed 1,000 CEOs, DEIB has not decreased in their level of priority because they know they need it for their businesses and how important it is. But they are concerned with how they approach it and what they say out loud because of the highly charged environment. So I'm curious in what you're seeing right now, if you're seeing that, number one, because I just heard it on a media outlet, doesn't mean it's, absolutely perfect and applicable for everyone. But how should executive leaders think about fostering inclusion and, if you will, kind of staying out of the political game of it,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
So I have an MBA background, right? I was a finance undergrad, MBA. I'm also an EEOC certified investigator.
Oh,
Why am
no.
I saying that? Because my first approach to anything is like risk management and
Yeah.
and maximizing profits, right? Like,
Yeah.
some of my anti-racism friends would be like, Alma, that's a part of the problem. You're a part of
Right.
the like, that's just how my brain works. And so why am I saying that? Because when we think about DEIB, oftentimes we think of the feeling piece. And personally, I'm like, why do we still have to talk about the business case to include people? I'm like, we should be over that.
Right.
However, it's turning to the point now where litigations are going up. People are suing more
I
now
saw
because,
that.
like, oh no,
Yeah.
EEOC filings and claims, they're increasing because
Yeah.
people now have the language, they have more confidence, and they feel more comfortable talking about these issues going on at work. And
Right.
so for a company, you can think about it being politically charged if you want to, but if you keep doing the same things and not improving and increasing inclusion within the workplace, you're opening yourself up to liability.
Yeah.
That's just the basic. And when you open yourself up to liability, you can very easily impact your profit margins.
That's right.
Nobody wants to do that. And
Never.
so I would say what I'm seeing is the name is changing. Like, people don't feel comfortable saying DEI anymore. They want to say inclusion. They don't want to
That's
say
true.
equity. They want to talk about inclusive workplaces, psychological safety. That's amazing. But DEI has been around for almost 60 years. So you can
Yeah.
call it what you want. That's what I'm saying. They want to call it different things to make people comfortable, but the work is going to stay the same. And the work is, how are people maximizing their whole self at work to bring the best value to the organization? That's at its most purest level. People want to win every day.
They do. They
They want to
do.
win. And they want to know they're making an impact. So how is your organization removing barriers,
That's right.
albeit personal, albeit professional, so people can do that? So that's what I'm seeing, just dancing around the name.
Yeah.
Um, but
I
the
see it
work is
too.
still necessary because litigations are going up.
They are. I saw that trend as well. And on top of that, I mean, if you saw the latest jobs report, there's so many more jobs that have been added. Unemployment is at a historic low. We won't even go into the war for talent piece of it, and really competing to have folks with the right skills and the right seats. If you're not inclusive, there are a lot of options out there for folks, and they may
There's
not choose
so
you, right?
they may not choose you, and while they're sitting there, they may not give their best and their best ideas.
That's
With
true.
the change of the demographics, I think in 2011, no, Pew Research said in 2011, more Black and brown babies were born than ever before, right? So as we know, demographics are changing. The Hispanics are becoming the majority minority now, right? Like,
Yes.
so all of those things impact how people purchase,
Yes.
how people see themselves, what people buy, how long they keep it, like all of those. So if you're talking about revenue, you got to include other voices and other ideas and lived experiences so people can identify with your product and hopefully buy more. Again, this isn't like a buy one, get one, include one, then you sell one, but
Yes.
it only makes business sense
Yes.
to focus on inclusion.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot with this question, but I'm sure there's tips or low-hanging fruit or things that you talk about, when you do speak on inclusion to organizations that you want them to start thinking about doing. And so we always, as part of the podcast, try to put additional tips in our playbook, if you will, our leadership playbook. So if you wouldn't mind, could you share maybe one or two thoughts or tips that you usually share, with employers to ensure that they foster inclusive workspaces?
Yeah, absolutely. So one is data. I think you start with data, lead with passion.
Mhm.
So what I mean by data is more than just the annual survey. And side note, if you are doing the annual survey, please make sure you are actually coming up with some action items
There
and
you go.
implementing stuff and then telling people what you're implementing, because people don't want to keep taking surveys if they don't see a change, right? Okay, side note.
I love it.
So data is important, and anything you collect, I think you need to analyze it by demographic. So the top five protected characteristics are a great way to do that, because you want to see if there's a difference in experience in your workplace. And that's everything from how you recruit to progressive disciplinary action. And so that starts to see what the story is saying, and then that will lead you into what you need to focus on first, whether it's, do I have unprofessional conduct part of my progressive disciplinary action? And do I see, oh my goodness, a large part of people who are getting written up for this are between the ages of 28 and 40. Okay, maybe that is an indicator that I need to maybe reword that or train about that, because that's so subjective. So it could
Right.
be something, as simple as that, but you need to analyze the data by demographic. The other thing I'll say, because I can talk about this forever, but I think every organization needs to have a management training program. And here is why. Most managers are, I'm going to say a lot, I'm not going to say most, are promoted based on their skill set and how well they did their job. They often are not put in the position to lead people, and they're often not graded on that. And so I think every organization needs to have management training program that includes DEI topics, like how do you hold an inclusive meeting, right? That might seem really simple, but in this new hybrid workforce, a lot of leaders don't know how to do that.
You're right. Yeah.
Right. So that management training program, regardless of how large you are, is ensuring that your leadership is going to not only represent the company well, but also represent your core values in leading people more than just managing a process.
Oh, love that. Love that. And what's a common mistake that managers make because they haven't had this kind of training, or what's a blind spot? Like, well, give us an example.
Oh, they have their go-to people. And
Ah,
typically their go-to people are like them. And most times when people say like them, they just think, race, age, gender, but sometimes it's work styles. Like, I know when I was a leader leading 150 people, I did have a few go-to people, and guess who they were? The ones who were D's like me, right? If you're familiar with the disc,
yes.
those
Yeah.
were visionaries, didn't need a lot of direction. You tell them to go, they're going to go get it done. The
Yeah.
moment people start asking too many questions, now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'll just go to someone else, right? But
Right.
that was strengthening my leadership style. So I
Right.
think having go-to people and not really thinking about the why behind it
Yeah.
is debilitating to the team, because you're not developing the rest of your team to be sustainable, whether you're there or not. And then the other pieces, going back to what I said, is the development. I think leaders don't develop their team. They just throw tasks at their team. And then the moment they go on vacation, if they do, things fall apart. And I think the great indicator of a leader is your system running efficiently and effectively without you. So go to people and not developing the team, just thinking about the task at hand, I think are two blind spots.
Oh, great. That was wonderful to share. And I totally agree with those. I've seen those a lot, as we do our consulting work as well. So I always tell people, just because you have expertise in the area doesn't mean you haven't tripped up along the way yourself. I know I have many times. I could tell stories about things that we had to turn things around just because I didn't know or didn't realize. But I'm just curious for you if there's a story or a share that you happen to have when you were learning more about inclusion that it was something that you took to heart and as a lesson in life.
Oh, yes. So Karen, I sometimes will, like, if I'm teaching a civility class, I'll be
Uh-huh.
like, "Hi, my name is Ama, and I was a terrible leader," right? Like, I've grown a lot. So I will say this was my first year having a team. My first year having a team, I maybe had like 25 people on my team.
Yeah.
But then there were other people I had to that were like dotted line to me. And I was reported because the Black and the white employees said I showed favoritism towards the Hispanic employees. So
Huh.
at first I was like, this is bogus. Really? I'm American, y'all American, get out of here. So I didn't even
Right.
validate how they felt. I didn't want to dig into it. I was like, yeah, whatever. But then the more I thought about it and then started analyzing my actions, they were right. Now, why were they right? Well, with my Black and white employees, I was very professional, right? I was, kind of I was fresh out of grad school. So I thought professionalism meant something that is kind of bogus now. But I was just very friendly, but cordial. It was, hi, how are you? How's your day? Okay, thanks. This is what I need you to do. With my Hispanic colleagues, it was, oh my God, how's the family? Kiss, kiss, like just really deep connections.
Right.
One would say, how is that possible? Well, I grew up in Miami, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I'm very comfortable with that Latin culture, and it showed. And where it started to bleed through is because, oh, I think they're hard workers. So if they need the day off, of course you need the day off. Go leave early, get your family, no problem. They started getting provisions. And with the American team members, I was just more straight to the book. I
Right.
didn't realize that until I started to truly dig deeper. And I had to make some changes because there was an in group and an out group. And that's the quickest way to create exclusion and a lack of equity on your team. So it was a mistake I was making. And I love to tell the story because it shows, regardless of race, you can still make these mistakes.
That's right.
We have bias.
Absolutely.
We feel comfortable with certain groups more than others. It's just who we naturally are. And that's why we do this work, to fight against who we naturally are. So yeah, they got me all the way together, Karen, and I had to make changes quickly.
Well, I'm not going to leave you out there all by yourself. I'll share a quick one of my own, a lesson learned. So, as I'm generally, as you can tell, very chatty and bubbly. And believe it or not, I was working in Miami at the time as well. So they're both Miami stories. But it was for a major healthcare company, and I was an internal HR workplace consultant for them. And I was friendly, nice, engaging to everyone. That was just my nature. And I was told that. But there was one thing I never did. And that was in our office. And this is back when you were in offices 24/7 almost.
Right.
Um, they would roll around a cart offering Cuban coffee. Well, I didn't drink coffee. And so I always said thank you, but no. And so a friend and a colleague of mine pulled me aside. I still remember to this day. He said, I want to put a little bug in your ear. He said, even if you don't drink the coffee, take it and go, because they would do it around 2:30ish every afternoon. And people would just take literally just 5 to 7 minutes to stop, go and maybe talk with a colleague, have their Cuban coffee, and they would be back to work. It was part of what the company offered. Well, I was new to South Florida at the time, and I did not know that people had, because there were it was a very diverse workforce, especially those of Cuban descent and Hispanic descent. They could not understand why I was so nice, but why I wouldn't accept the coffee and go on the chatting breaks. And so from that point on, I took the coffee. I always found a group to go on chatting breaks. And the friend who kind of pulled my coattail and let me know what was going on said, "Hey, folks are loving you having that coffee." And I didn't drink Cuban. I still don't drink Cuban coffee, but it was the norm and the culture that I did not understand. And I did not understand how it was impacting the perception of me, and how, because they couldn't reconcile it, it kind of, I won't say closed the door, but they were hesitant about really sharing their deep feelings. And once that happened, things just, I didn't know they were bad, but they turned around a lot, and people were in my office all the time. So
That
that was a
is
lesson learned
such a
for
good
me.
story. Oh, that's a good story. And
Yeah.
I love that your friend pulled you to the side, because
Yes.
often what happens is you'll have people come into an organization and there are spoken rules and there are
Yes.
unspoken rules.
And that was
And
unspoken.
people are more so judged on the unspoken rules, but you're being judged by something you don't even know about. And
Didn't have a
there, you had no
clue.
clue. That was a cultural competence moment,
It
right? Like, you didn't
was.
know. And so good for your friend for like pulling you to the side and telling you, and good for to you for making the change.
I did. I did. I would pretend to sip, because they come in little Dixie
Like
cup
that.
servings. So I pretend to sip just a teeny bit, but I would spend my time talking. And then, when our 5 to 7 minutes was up, I'm like, "Okay, girl, see you later."
Look, good thing you didn't drink it, because you will still be up to this
I
day.
know, I know. And I never threw it away in front of anybody. I didn't want it to go back that I was, perpetrating or whatever. But yeah,
Oh,
I
that's so
still
good.
remember
Thank
it
you
to
for
this
sharing that.
day. Absolutely. Well, one of the things we always love to ask our guests is, we did a lot of research on leadership execution and some best practices. And I read a book about our research. But out of the research, there were a lot of things we found, but we found 7 big tactics or pillars of things that some of the world's highest performing leaders actually did when they were leading any effort. And so we always love to ask our guests which of the 7, they're all equally as important, but which of the 7 really resonated with you? And you had a couple, but if you had to put one first, you were so kind to share that leading with courageous agility popped out for you. And, based on your background and expertise, it's not a total surprise, but in a moment, I'd love to get your thoughts about it. But for you listeners that are new to the podcast, leading with courageous agility is all about having the courage and the fortitude to take calculated risk and stand up for what you believe in, or still move forward on any initiative, even if you don't know what's going to happen, even if the future is uncertain or unclear. It's all about that agility to take a baby step forward based on the information you know at this point in time, and then make forward progress in a good and positive way. So curious minds want to know, why did leading with courageous agility resonate with you?
Yeah, for several reasons. I would say one is it aligned very well with the Deloitte 6 C's of inclusive leadership, because courage and commitment is one of them. And they also have curiosity, but I think it takes courage to be
It
to be
does.
curious,
I agree.
because you have to show vulnerability and that you don't know something.
Yeah.
I think when you are operating in a space of inclusion and trying to create those environments for people, one, you need a humility to say, I don't know something, so I want to learn either more about you, either more about how you experience something. And I think it takes a fortitude to say, this is not serving a certain group of people well, or it only serves one group. What about the rest? Like, it takes courage to speak up. It takes courage to look internally of what your biases are and really start to work on that and mitigate it. When we're talking about dismantling certain systems, so it is more it's more collaborative for everyone there. That takes courage.
It does.
Because you're talking about a new landscape, and we don't fully know what that new landscape is going to be like. We know the old one. We know that one very well, right?
We do.
So much courage. And that is why, I mean, I could talk forever about it. That is why I chose it, because it aligned really well. And when you think about this walk of inclusion and equity and really acknowledging who's in the in group, who's in the out group, who feels seen, value, and heard, who doesn't, like that takes a lot of courage.
It does.
Yeah. So
to your point about there's so many unwritten norms in the workplaces. And I always say in inclusion, especially in the larger corporate or enterprise level organizations, those roads to inclusion, and this will tell you how country I am, they're like unpaved country roads. There's no real direction. You don't know the obstacles and roadblocks that you're going to. It's not a pretty smooth path to drive on, and you're trying to figure it all out. It takes a lot of courage and, to your point, curiosity to do so, because nobody wants to be on the wrong end of a conversation, or not to make others feel included and not to feel included yourself. So
oh my
totally
goodness,
agree
you're
with you.
absolutely right. Like, I really don't believe people wake up and say, I want to be crappy and
No.
exclusive and like make people feel bad. Like, I don't think people wake up saying that. Well, if
No.
you're not intentionally being that, that means it happens unintentionally, which means that might be in your nature in somewhat. And that takes courage to really look internally and say, ooh, these are things I need to change. I don't know what that road ahead is going to be like. Like you mentioned, those country roads. I went to Tuskegee University. It just took me back to those little country roads in Alabama.
Yes.
They were bumpy and they were
Yes.
dirty.
Yes.
But if you stayed on the road, and you might detour, but eventually you
You
get
get to your place. Yep.
Get
You'll
to
be
your place.
excited.
So yeah, that was such a good analogy.
Oh, wonderful. Well, we're going to have a ton of information about you, your business, where to find you in our show notes. But I always love to give our guests airtime to let our listeners know where they can find you, your company, and maybe if you can give us a 15-second overview of the services you all provide.
Yes, thank you. So I'm known as That Inclusion Lady on Instagram, TikTok, all the things. I talk about all things inclusion and just managing a diverse and inclusive workplace environment. I'm That Inclusion Lady Agyapong on LinkedIn, so you can find me on all the social media handles that way.
Nice.
Our website is inclusionenterprises.org, and we are a training and development consulting firm that really focuses on helping leaders manage the dynamic of difference so you can create an inclusive workplace environment. So we do that through coaching, through training, through, speaking. And the focus is really not this training platform that a lot of companies do. I feel adults learn better through hands-on practical application, specifically through a cohort style. When you have that community while you're learning and you create that safe space, I think it just makes an indelible impact. So that is a little bit about us. We do, all the inclusive stuff, all the DEI stuff, as well as leadership training and coaching.
Oh, fantastic. I don't know where you have time when you have time to sleep between taking care of the little one and running around and working and doing all that. That is just amazing. So congratulations on your success thus far.
Thank you so much. And again, thank you for having me, Karen. I've been admiring you from afar for a long time. And all the amazing things that you do. Oh my gosh, setting the bar.
You. Oh, that is so kind of you to say. I appreciate you. Well, thanks again. And thanks again, listeners, for joining another episode of the Lead at the Top of Your Game podcast. We know that you have literally a billion podcasts you could be listening to, so we do not take your time for granted. We appreciate you. Please be sure to like and subscribe the podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice. And please be sure to share with just one friend, because by doing so, we all together can learn how to lead at the top of our game. Thanks so much, and see you next week. And that's our show for today. Thank you for listening to the Lead at the Top of Your Game podcast, where we help you lead your seat at any employer, business, or industry in which you choose to play. You can check out the show notes, additional episodes, bonus resources, and also submit guest recommendations on our website at leadyourgamepodcast.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn by searching for the name Karen Rhodes, with Karen being spelled Karan. And if you like the show, the greatest gift you can give would be to subscribe and leave a rating on your podcast platform of choice. This podcast has been a production of Shockingly Different Leadership, a global consultancy which helps organizations execute their people, talent development, and organizational effectiveness initiatives on an on-demand project or contract basis. Huge thanks to our production and editing team for a job well done. Goodbye for now.